in Tanzania, of course, we're very much working in a Muslim environment. In Benin, the south half of Benin is very much about voodoo and animism. So we go into those villages, and it's a very spirit oppositional world. And in the north, of course, it's more Muslim, which is more physical and opposition. And so, but when we come with a helping hand, the door is just wide open to have all kinds of conversations.
Absolutely. I mean, nobody's going to argue with clean water. And in the work that I'm involved in Africa, I've seen entire communities transformed by clean water. I mean, you think about living your whole life with, if not polluted, certainly compromised water, and all of the intestinal issues, sometimes skin lesions and other kinds of things that result, and you almost accept this as a norm. Suddenly you have clean water, and you can't believe the difference it makes. It's just phenomenal. Now, one of the things that you do, which I've engaged with on several occasions, is your Christian embassy in Ottawa. And the way that I got involved was back when I was pastoring Broadway Church. I called Barry Bowater one day, who worked at that time for Campus Crusade, and I just heard a report on some moral issue the government was facing, and they were consulting with the Council of Roman Catholic Bishops, which I thought was great. But I thought, I wonder why we don't have a similar body of Protestant evangelicals, just for the sake of a comprehensive perspective for the government's sake. And Barry thought that was a good idea too, so he and I formed what was called the Pastors' Council, and we started meeting on Parliament Hill every year, and we naturally engaged with the Christian Embassy, and the great work that your staff are doing there. Really, in many ways, you're sort of almost the ad hoc chaplaincy ministry for Parliament Hill. All of these MPs who are men and women of faith, ambassadors, the Christmas event that you put on, I've been there several times. It really is a significant thing, isn't it?
It really is. It's one of our premier groups. We've got a whole team. In Power to Change as a whole, we talk about felt need-based evangelism. And so when an ambassador from a foreign nation comes to Canada, one of their biggest felt needs is actually relationships. So we host ambassador tours like this week, in fact, in Vancouver. We've got the ambassador from Panama and Kenya. A couple of weeks ago, we had the ambassador from Sudan, Vietnam, and South Korea in Saskatoon. But what we do is we take these guys who are looking for relationships, for business connections to represent in their country, and we tour them around to these businesses, and we give the Christian business leader an opportunity to talk about his faith. The ambassador, of course, is able to make relationships, and then we invite them to Bible studies, and we have the Christian banquet for them, and then we take a lot of the political leaders and business leaders with us on international trips, so we make friends with the ambassadors. We get invited to countries all over the world, and God is using that team, Jerry Sherman in particular, in just an amazing way.
Jerry Sherman is terrific. And you don't think about these things until you confront them. But I've often sat with ambassadors from various countries around the world at that Christmas banquet, and they're just downright lonely. I mean, they're feeling like foreigners. They don't have any relational bonding with anybody in their neighborhood where they live, and certainly, within the context of Parliament Hill, it's all kind of official, meetings and so on.
Very much so.
And so, my wife and I would just start talking to them about their children, their family back home, their, what they used to do before they became an ambassador. And I mean, they just open up. And I think it's, this relationship evangelism is really critical. Tell me about Soul Cravings. Now, this may not show up that well. Oh, that's not bad on the camera there. Soul Cravings. Erwin Raphael McManus. What's this all about?
Well, when we approached the Olympics last year as a group of believers, we created this group called More Than Gold, and it was kind of what is going to be our Christian expression to the Olympics coming to Vancouver. And so we had all the different denominations, YWAM, Youth for Christ, Billy Graham Association. We're all sitting there, and we were looking at all our materials, and I just said to everyone, I said, I don't believe that we can approach the culture of people that's coming here, the affluent, the secular, in the streets of Vancouver with this material and hope that we're going to make a difference for Christ. And so a group of them said, well, Leonard, why don't you come up with something? And so we were back in the office, and we're trying to think, like, how should we approach all these people that are coming to BC? The world is coming to us. How can we engage with them on a spiritual conversation that means something? And so I was just sitting there talking, and I said, well, Erwin, who's a pastor in LA, has written this book called Soul Cravings. And I said, I love the concept, the angle of approach that he's using in that book, but I said, it's too thick, it's too wordy, we need something smaller. And so one of my directors says, well, why don't you call Erwin and see if he'll let you shorten the book and make a tract or something that we could put in the hands of believers to start a conversation. So I called Erwin, I said, Erwin, I know you've written this book, and I was kind of thinking about the Olympics. Would you let me cut and paste it into a small book so we could give something to people to begin a conversation? And so after negotiating with him for a while, we came up with this book. And the book really is designed, it talks about 6 billion people all have the same intrinsic cravings of intimacy, destiny, and meaning in life. And so as you begin this conversation, everybody will agree their soul craves.
Yeah.
And so you can start with a common ground. So the Christian can walk up to a non-Christian and say, hey, do you crave things? I crave things. So then, of course, we have the option of how do we meet those cravings. You know, Acts 17, Paul actually talks to Mars Hill that way. He says, I see you have idols, you know, and let me talk about the unknown God. And so in today's society, we have people who crave things. And so this really in a similar way, I see you crave things, and could it be that you've been designed that way by God, and one of the solutions to those cravings might be Jesus, right?
Yeah.
And so it starts a conversation, and as we did large surveys, we found that if we started with, let's say, our traditional approach of the 4 spiritual laws, only 15% of people would engage with us. But if we started with this booklet, about 85% of people would immediately engage in the conversation with you. So we were looking for, how do we begin this conversation with people in a positive way about Jesus? So it allows us to start with God and Jesus, and continue that conversation. So
that's terrific.
Delighted, yeah.
That's terrific. And we're right out of time here, but just briefly, Crave, the documentary, the DVD, is this just more of the book, or is this something different?
Well, when we tried to train the people in Vancouver, what we ran up against was the concept. The shift was so great. We were missing some messaging. So I asked Erwin, I said, would you come up to Vancouver and just interview a whole bunch of people who don't know God? And let's prove that Canada's completely open to a spiritual conversation. And so we did this documentary. It's a brilliant presentation of what people think about on the spiritual conversation. And of course now, we've designed our campus ministry. We've got a whole theme of my cravings to reach the students. And so they all complement each other. So we're using this concept right through all of our ministries.
Well, that's terrific. That's starting where people are at, and it's a great ministry. What's your website?
Debbie.
I'm sorry, your website.
Oh, sorry. I thought you asked my wife's name.
Wife's name. Yeah, it sounded like that. Well, I'm glad we know that it's Debbie. No, your website.
It's powertochange.com.
Powertochange.com.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, friends, if you want to check in on that. And can people access this material in any way? Or?
Yeah, sure. It's on the website.
It's on the website.
Just go to the store and you can
Powertochange.com.
Yeah.
Leonard Buhler, thanks for coming our way.
You're welcome.
Terrific.
It's good to be here.